My daughter abandoned me when I was battling cancer, and 2 years later she came back thinking I was already dead, hoping to inherit everything I had. I'm 56, and 7 months ago, I was diagnosed with bowel cancer. It was discovered during a routine checkup, and fortunately, it was in the early stages. Despite the doctor's positive outlook, I was devastated. No one would be happy knowing they might die. I came home and told my daughter about it, and she was just as shaken as I was. I have no one but her, and she has no one but me. Her mother is alive, but for both of us, she might as well not exist. I live alone with my daughter Hannah, who is 22. My wife and I split 14 years ago by mutual agreement. Love faded, and she moved to Atlanta with her boyfriend. I got custody of our daughter, who was 8 at the time. Hannah was always a difficult child. She took our divorce hard and was furious at her mother for abandoning her. She hasn't spoken to her since, not even picking up the phone. I tried to fill that void and raise her as best I could, but it seems I messed up somewhere. When I told Hannah about my illness, her first reaction was pain. We cried, hugged, told each other how much we loved one another, and reminisced about happy times, her graduation, our annual trips, hiking in the mountains. She promised to support me and take care of me. I couldn't imagine she'd get tired of it and just abandon me. But 7 months later, she packed her things and left, discarding me like useless trash. I'd always been her rock, but this is how she repaid me. I understand it's hard for a young girl to care for a sick father, but she didn't even have to do much. There was a nurse handling all the practical stuff. All I needed for my daughter was for her to just be there. The doctor advised me to quit work or at least cut back because the treatment was draining, both physically and emotionally. I told my boss, and he was understanding, saying I could return once I beat the illness. I quit to focus entirely on recovery. Financially, I was fine, no major obligations. I'd paid off my mortgage long ago, covered Hannah's education, and had enough savings for several years, plus assets I could sell if needed. So money wasn't an issue either. I was determined, the doctor supported me, and Hannah drove me to chemo and regular checkups. Chemotherapy was brutal. After a session, I could barely move for a day or two. I needed my daughter's help with the simplest things, bringing food, giving me meds. I got a wheelchair to move around the house, but even getting into it was sometimes a struggle. The treatment drained me not just physically but mentally. I felt so weak, like my bones might crumble. It was agonizing to realize I could barely handle basic tasks, eating, walking a few steps, getting to the bathroom. Over time, Hannah grew irritated. She stopped coming into my room, spoke curtly and in monosyllables. It hurt to see her ignore me. She was the only person in my life, and talking to her helped me forget the pain. But when she became a stranger, nothing could have been worse. I decided to talk to her, asked if she saw me as a burden. She exploded yelling, "Yes, it hurt to hear that." She said she was tired of taking care of me. I understood that cooking and helping around the house was tough for her, and young people don't like being around the sick. So I told her I'd hire a nurse. I contacted the hospital, and they provided an experienced caregiver for cancer patients. I thought I'd solved the problem, but Hannah stayed angry. She remained distant and was rude to the nurse. I asked the nurse to avoid Hannah, but she still nitpicked, banned her from touching the fridge or even entering the kitchen because, supposedly, she was dirty from tending to a sick person. Though she never said it to her face. It became clear Hannah just hated her. The nurse asked if I was satisfied with her work because it felt otherwise. I assured her she was doing an excellent job and I had no complaints. That evening, after the nurse left, I decided to confront Hannah. I'd already asked her to leave the nurse alone and not interfere with her work, but now my patience was gone. The nurse was starting to feel the full brunt of Hannah's hostility, and I had to step in before she quit. When I told Hannah she was being rude to the nurse, she lost it. She screamed that I was making a big deal out of nothing, saying she stinks, and tried to lecture me about hygiene rules. That set me off, and I yelled, "She's a nurse. She's trained in hygiene. She knows more about it than you. Who are you to lecture her, you dropout?" She threw a tantrum, screaming for 10 minutes about how I'd ruined her life, blaming me for her mother abandoning her, saying she never had a normal childhood like others. That didn't faze me much. I was used to her outbursts. But then came the real blow. She started spewing filth about the nurse, calling her worthless, disgusting, repulsive, and finally said, "I know why you're defending her. Did she make you her sugar daddy?" Then she added that the nurse must have figured I was an easy target, wormed her way in, and planned to take all my stuff since I had no heirs. I didn't let her finish. "What the hell is wrong with you? Are you even sane?" Our argument turned into a full-blown fight. In the end, she slammed the door and stormed out. An hour later, I heard her yelling again from the living room. She was dragging out suitcases, shouting, "I'm leaving. You'll be better off now. Do whatever you want with your mistress. Blow all your money on her before you die. I don't care. Don't expect me to come back when you're dying. I won't." I wanted to stop her, but her words crushed me. Tears welled up, and I just sat by the window, watching her stuff suitcases into her trunk and drive off. It's been weeks since she left. I feel worthless. I failed as a father. Her words hurt more than my illness. How could she think I was having an affair with the nurse? How could she say something like that? I feel like a complete failure, as a husband and a father. I have no motivation to keep up with treatment anymore. Edited. Thanks, everyone, for the support. This post unexpectedly got a huge response. I just wanted to vent, to use the internet as a kind of therapy to ease the loneliness and despair. Every comment means the world to me. Even the tiniest bit of warmth matters right now. Thank you. Someone asked why my 22-year-old daughter still lives with me, and if I took her to a psychologist as a kid. Yes, I tried to help her deal with her emotions. I took her to specialists, spent time with her, tried to keep her entertained. I even avoided serious relationships to not hurt her more. Hannah took the divorce hard and became aggressive. Therapy helped, but her angry outbursts kept coming back. She dropped out of college. I tried to convince her to keep studying, but no luck. She said she wanted to start her own business, a beauty salon. I paid for it. There, she met a guy she called the love of her life. A few months later, at 19, she wanted to marry him. I advised her to wait, but as always, she did it her way. Their marriage didn't last a year. Soon after the wedding, she moved back in with me. Her husband was a jobless bum who lived off her salon's earnings. They burned through all the money I'd invested, and they had to sell the business. Then he dumped her, leaving her with nothing. He was broke, so she didn't even get alimony. She ended up with nothing, no business, no husband, no money. I took her in again. And now, when I'm sick and don't know how long I have left, she's ditched me like garbage. So, share your thoughts in the comments about this situation. What advice would you give the author? What should he do next? Now on to an update. Update 1. Hey friends. I know I've been off the radar for a while. Thanks for checking in. I'm so glad I found real friends online. I never thought I'd get this much support here. This month, I had my last chemo session, and I'm officially cancer-free. I can't express how grateful I am to the medical team for the flawless treatment they gave me. After my fallout with my daughter, my recovery slowed down, if not stalled completely. My doctor got worried and suggested I see a psychologist to deal with the stress. It really helped. At my first session, I just broke down crying, What a relief to finally talk to someone openly. I even told the psychologist I didn't want to keep going with treatment and was ready to give up to the illness. But she helped me tackle the depression and despair. They also recommended hiring a full-time caregiver since I was living alone and getting weaker. In an emergency, I needed someone there to help. I offered to double my nurse's pay to work round the clock since she already knew my medical history and diagnosis. I didn't want to switch to someone new who'd have to learn everything from scratch. If Hannah were around, she'd have found another reason to lash out at me over this. I hate recalling the accusations she threw at me. How could she even imagine that? But I've moved past it. If she could abandon me at my lowest, I shouldn't dwell on her either. Thanks to the doctors, psychologist, and nurse, I focused on recovery. When Hannah drove me to chemo, I'd notice how I felt not just physically drained but emotionally shattered after the sessions. She'd throw tantrums, and I worried about her more than the treatment itself. I lost my hair, dropped a lot of weight, but never lost my resolve to beat the disease. It sounds awful, but maybe Hannah leaving was a blessing. With her gone, so was all the negative energy. I felt relief. I'd clung to her too long, made her my sole purpose, sacrificed my happiness for her. She taught me a harsh lesson, that I'd overdone it as a parent. My love and care let her use me. I was her punching bag, and I let her walk all over me. But not anymore. It's so freeing to not carry that weight. I'm starting a new life. I thought about going back to work, but now I see I don't need to. I have enough money to cover my expenses. If it ever runs low, I can get a simple job at a supermarket or something. But right now, my priority is rebuilding my strength. I've started with walks and hope to jog once the shortness of breath fades. It's not easy. I still tire quickly, even from basic tasks. But I'm moving forward, step by step. The nurse is still with me, but I'll let her go once I feel strong enough to manage on my own. Update 2. It's been 2 years since I was declared healthy. These 2 years, I've spent finally doing things that bring me joy. I realized I'd never really lived for myself. My whole life, I worked to give my daughter a good life. In my free time, I devoted everything to her, trying to replace her mother, avoiding serious relationships. I turned down dates with women, then felt guilty about it. Eventually, I stopped trying to date at all for my daughter. Looking back, I see how pointless that was. She grew up, and I never started living for me. Even after she left, I still worried about how she'd react to changes in my life. She'd always lived with me, except for the 10 months she was married, and I knew she couldn't stand the thought of another woman in the house. After recovering, I decided to try dating again. It was awkward. The funniest part? I realized the dating world has changed so much. Women use all these new words and phrases I have to Google mid-conversation. After a few failed updates, I met a woman I clicked with. I'll call her Syra. She's just over 50. Her husband cheated on her multiple times, and she forgave him for their daughter's sake, but eventually left and raised her kid alone. Now her daughter's grown and moved out for college, and she decided to find someone too. Funny enough, it was her daughter who pushed her to date again. Sometimes, hearing her talk about her daughter, I feel a little jealous, not in a bad way, just wondering why my daughter never appreciated me like that. We dated for about 6 or 7 months, then moved in together. Some might say it's too fast, but honestly, I'm almost 60. I don't think I have all that much time left. We could have lived in my house, but Syra wanted me to move into hers. She's a creative person with great taste and designed her home down to the details, unlike mine, which desperately needed repairs and held no fond memories for me. I wanted a change too, so I sold it. Yep, sold it. More money for me and a comfortable old age. Why not? Why should I leave that house to Hannah, who abandoned me to die. But that was a few months ago. Why am I writing this update now? Because last week, I saw a ghost. Syra and I were relaxing when Andy, the new owner of my old house, called me. He was furious, saying some woman trespassed on his property and caused a scene, even clashing with his girlfriend. According to Andy, a young woman snuck into the yard and tried to unlock the door with a key, but the locks had been changed. When she couldn't get in, she pounded on the door. Andy's girlfriend opened it, upset about the noise, and Hannah started insulting her, claiming she'd slept with a dying old man to get the house. Andy's girlfriend was stunned, trying to explain there was a mistake, but Hannah kept screaming, demanding they vacate her father's house. Andy wasn't home, but his girlfriend called him in a panic. By the time he got there, Hannah was gone, threatening to return with friends the next day. Andy called me, described the woman, and I knew it was Hannah. He asked if I knew her. I reluctantly admitted she was my daughter. He was livid that I hadn't warned him about potential trouble and demanded I deal with her, or he'd call the police. I told him to go ahead and call the cops, get a restraining order, but then realized it was my responsibility. I went there the next day and waited. Hannah showed up with 2 friends. She was yelling from the porch and even smashed a couple of flower pots. Andy came out with a baseball bat, ready to scare them off. I begged him not to. He's a baseball coach, so of course he couldn't resist showing off. Before Hannah and her friends could charge him, I stepped outside. She froze. So did her friends. She stammered, "You're alive? I thought you were dead. What about your cancer?" Best moment ever. I'd give the house away for free just to see her face. Hannah went pale. Then she looked at Andy and his girlfriend and asked, "Who are they?" I said, "The new owners. I sold the house." She brazenly asked, "Where's the money? You're dying anyway, right?" Her words were harsh, but this time they didn't hurt. Instead, I laughed in her face and, since she asked, said, "The money's for me to spend on myself." Yes, I'm not sick anymore, and if you're wondering, no, you're not getting a cent. I quit my job, and everything I have, I'll spend on myself until it's gone. You can keep thinking your father's dead, like you have for the past 2 years. She started crying, sent her friends home, saying this was now between her and me. I told Andy I was leaving and that if Hannah caused more trouble, he should call the police and get a restraining order. As I walked away, Hannah ran after me. "Dad, don't do this. I'm your daughter, your only family. You can't abandon me." I smirked. "I can, just like you abandoned me." I got in my car and drove off. Normally, after something like that, I'd feel guilt, pain, sadness. But that day, I felt light, satisfied, even happy. I think I did the right thing. She needed that lesson long ago. Thanks for reading and supporting me. I hope none of you ever face betrayal like this. Love to you all.